So what do we want to do in terms of this topic? Well, first of all, I want to take a look at when does taking supplements make sense? We're also going to explore, if you take a supplement, how much makes sense? And hopefully some of you did the homework that I sent out, which will help with that in that respect too. How do you know if you're taking too much? You know, people often don't get the concept of more than enough is not better than enough. In fact, it's worse in the case of nutrients. And also then we'll summarize things with how to proceed cautiously with supplements, because there sometimes is a very good use for them. So what are they? If we look at the definition from the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994, they define them as vitamins, minerals, herbs, etc., intended for ingestion in pill, capsule, tablet, or liquid form. So supplements aren't supposed to look like food. And foods have different labels than supplements for that reason. They have the supplement facts on supplements and nutrition facts on foods. They're very similar in terms of the way they're structured, but they're designed differently because supplements have a lot of other things in them besides nutrients at times. So, types of supplements then. We've got, of course, supplements that have nutrients. That's the most common one that we're familiar with. And then there's various types of supplements that have other things than nutrients. We'll talk about those a bit too. Fortified foods. People don't often think of those as supplements per se, and they are a little different, but you probably should think of them as supplements when you go to adding everything up that you're getting, because some fortified foods are quite high in some nutrients. And we'll get back to that in just a bit. So, the key nutrient supplements, and I'm going to go through some of this kind of quickly because I think we want to save a lot of time for questions on this topic, but everybody's familiar with the multivitamin mineral types of supplements, and then of course, specific maybe to men and women. Typically one for men doesn't have iron, and women may emphasize things like calcium, iron, vitamin D, and so on. Then there's the single nutrient supplements, which, of course, things like B12 are commonly taken in separately by sometimes based on physician recommendations. And some with specific functions, for example, bone supplement would be typically a combination of calcium, vitamin D, and sometimes various other things. Or B-complex vitamins, things like that. So then there's the non-nutrient supplements, things with that contain things like herbs, and so ginseng as an example, and a lot of times herbal sources of caffeine. People say, "Oh, I really feel good when I take this particular herb," and I say, "Well, that's it's high in caffeine, so you probably do feel a little perky." And then there's the metabolic precursor type of supplements. What do we mean by that? I don't know if you've seen 5-HTP. You can even get that at Costco, I noticed. It stands for 5-hydroxytryptophan, which is actually an amino acid that is very easily converted to a neurotransmitter called serotonin. And increasing serotonin levels tends to make us feel more relaxed, and sometimes it works as a sleep aid. So that would be a precursor to a neurotransmitter in that case. Also, we have supplements that contain certain hormones like melatonin, another sleep type of aid. And then there's also probiotics, which are things like dietary fiber to feed those microorganisms in the lower intestine, and a lot of times there's good reasons for those, and et cetera. We could go on and on with different types of supplements out there. Okay, foods also may be supplements, and I mentioned fortified foods earlier as a type of supplement. So Oftentimes, things like cereals are fortified. If you pick up Total or something like that, it's kind of like a cereal with a multivitamin mineral pill in it for a lot of things. Fortified juices, sometimes orange juice is fortified with calcium and vitamin D now. Meal replacement beverages, sometimes those can be really handy. Convenience foods that a lot of people are using these days, but if you look at the labels, sometimes they're quite high in all of these vitamins and minerals, and they may actually represent a supplement. Even protein bars can be that way, protein powders, shakes, a lot of those products that are out there now. So you need to add all this stuff up, things like soy milk. Even prunes, I noticed it recently, was fortified with vitamin B12. Not all brands, but kind of goes with the territory, I guess. All right, so what was this act, Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act? Basically, among other things, one of the important things to understand about it was that it says that supplements can include a lot of things that are not allowed in foods. So you can put things in supplements that you cannot legally add to foods. FDA only regulates general manufacturing practices and cleanliness and things like that, but not product safety, initially at least. There's no pre-market evaluation of supplements by Food and Drug Administration. And if a significant number of adverse events are reported about a product, then the Food and Drug Administration gets into the game and figures out, okay, we have a problem here, we need to maybe pull this from the market. I know Joni and I are both on the email list for FDA and looking at what's getting pulled from the market regularly. We get their messages, and it's pretty sobering seeing what kind of things people have been spiking supplements with, and illegally. And they make a whole bunch of money for a while, and then they get their hands slapped and products pulled from the market. They get a fine, but they move on with the profit. So it's a little wild, wild world out there in that realm sometimes. So, okay, but there are some reasons we should talk about for taking dietary supplements, and there are some good products out there on the market. So, of course, to meet nutrient needs under special conditions is one of the reasons we take them. It could be because you have very low calorie needs, and it's hard to meet your vitamin and mineral needs, and even protein needs sometimes when your calorie needs are quite low. Back when I was, in my 40s and 50s, I was training for marathons all the time, and my calorie needs were easily 3,000 or 4,000 calories a day. I was eating a vegetarian diet most of that time, and it was probably easier to meet my nutrient needs on that diet because I was eating so many calories. If you're eating a lot of food, you get more of everything, including nutrients. Now, my calorie needs are much lower. And so possibly a supplement then can be a handy thing. So if you've got somebody whose calorie needs have dropped because they've had to become less active with age, that's one thing. People on a diet for weight loss, of course, that's another thing. And a lot of other reasons. Limited variety of foods in the diet. Certainly, you want to keep that variety if you can. Extreme demands. So pre or post surgery, getting ready for surgery sometimes could be beneficial to crank up your nutrient status a bit because your body's going to be under a lot of stress. Injury recovery, that sort of thing. Therapeutic nutrition for special health problems, changes with aging, we kind of talked about that. Vegetarian diet, you can theoretically meet all your nutrient needs if you eat enough food and in the right combinations and everything, but it's challenging and not easy. So oftentimes proper supplementation can make a vegetarian diet work better. I know a lot of people consume a vegetarian diet for various philosophical, ethical reasons, and so what they need to do is make sure they're still getting all their nutrients. That's why we got our little Got Nutrients logo, is bottom line in nutrition is, first of all, I don't care, you can eat any old way you want as long as you're getting all the nutrients you need in that diet. And so what we talk about is what makes that challenging. Post-bariatric surgery nutrition, a huge challenge in absorbing enough vitamins and minerals because you don't have as much gastrointestinal tract in there anymore. And then there's also sometimes drug-induced increases in nutrient needs. Things like, for example, taking ibuprofen on a regular basis can increase your folic acid requirement or folate need, and so on and so on. So there's a lot of good reasons to take supplements in the right amounts and in the right combinations. Other reasons, chronic disease prevention, things like long-chain omega-3 fatty acids that you get in fish oils or certain very specific engineered algae oils. I was talking to someone during the break about an omega-3 supplement, and if it's just omega-3, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's taking care of what you need on the omega-3 fatty acid front. It needs to provide what's called EPA and DHA. So the plant omega-3s are giving you a slightly different molecule that your body has to convert to EPA and DHA. And some people don't do that very efficiently, so it's better off to get the longer chain omega-3 fatty acids. My mother, for example, is philosophically a staunch vegetarian, and she's 94 now, and one of the things I send her all the time is an algae oil long-chain omega-3 supplement because she's not getting that anywhere else in her diet, and she really needs it, and it helps her a lot. So anyway, getting a little off on the side there. So a lot of different reasons there for chronic disease prevention. B vitamin therapy, also some people use that for heart disease risk reduction. Antioxidant nutrients, there's a lot of reasons to use those too. And you want to keep those in the proper balance and so on. So osteoporosis for calcium, hypertension, obesity even. Calcium seems to be important. Vitamin D has all kinds of connections with different diseases. As we study that, it's just amazing the things that keep popping up with getting enough vitamin D. So it's a lot of recommendations out there. This was one that came out early this century, actually. In 2002, there was an article published in the Journal of the American Medical Association recommending that all Americans take a multivitamin daily to help prevent chronic disease. Then in the next following year, a study came out, Annals of Internal Medicine, found that multivitamins decrease the risk of infection for people with diabetes. That same year, the Stockholm Heart Study showed the use of multivitamins aided in the prevention of heart attacks. There's your references. How true is all of this? We always look for a body of literature, right? And these were good studies. These were definitely sound, good studies, and there's probably some truth to it. But whether or not a multivitamin mineral type of supplement is going to benefit you is probably highly dependent on what you're doing with your diet to start with. And there are other studies that found no benefit to multivitamins. And you'll probably hear about those too. Those make big press usually. Multivitamins worthless, right? Another study comes out, everybody's going to die if they don't take one. Well, it's somewhere in between those two extremes is the reality. So I kind of like this slide. If it sounds good to be true, if you think your heifer is going to be swimming with the dolphins, why, need a reality check probably, but that's not always easy. So if you take a supplement, how much should you take? And again, it depends on your diet and the nutrient or nutrients that you're looking at. So how much? All nutrients are potentially toxic at some dose. Some are more risky than others. Vitamin A, for example, and sometimes people will say that the beta-carotene form of vitamin A here is less risky, but it does carry some risk too. Vitamin B6, we know, can cause neurological problems in people when taken in excessive amounts. Calcium is linked to a number of issues. Too much iron is not good either, and that's why we're very careful about recommending iron supplements typically without knowing somebody's iron status to start with. Zinc can be toxic, selenium definitely, and manganese. Manganese is one of those that's kind of off the radar screen a bit. There are large amounts found in a lot of natural foods actually, and getting too much manganese can be risky, and Dr. Dobbs has actually been studying that to some extent. We just got that on our radar screen recently. So, little graph here to talk you through how to think about how much of a nutrient is the right amount. Now, if you look at this, what it's showing you is on the left here, the relative risk of inadequacy. So 1.0 means definite inadequacy. And on the x-axis here is the level of intake of our nutrient. In this case, we're looking at the requirement for adult female for vitamin A. So as we increase the intake of vitamin A, what we see is the risk of inadequacy, of course, declines. And at what we call the EAR, which stands for Estimated Average Requirement, that meets about 50% of the population's needs. So there's a 50-50 chance that you're getting enough at that level of intake. The RDA, or Recommended Dietary Allowance, which we use for recommendations for most all healthy individuals, and again, I underline maybe all healthy individuals there, is set up here at a level that takes into account practically everybody. As you can see, there actually is a small little percentage here that, statistically speaking, the RDA may not meet their need. But the vast majority of us need less than the RDA. But we don't know where we are. So ideally, we're getting the RDA or a little more, perhaps. Now, the DV, the daily value, is what's on food labels. So or on a supplement. So if you're taking a supplement and it says it's got 100% of the DV, or daily value, for vitamin A, that means that it has 1,500 micrograms of vitamin A in it. So that's a little over double the RDA for our female here. So really it's over 200% of her RDA. The upper limit is up here at about twice the daily value, 3,000 micrograms per day, and so that's the tolerable upper intake level, the level of intake that if you exceed that, the risk of adverse effects of too much goes up. So up to that point, it's thought that, okay, the risk is not much, but you don't want to get beyond that. So, okay, and I'm going to come back to this graph in a minute. So one of the things we just looked at on that table was this upper limit here, and that's this tolerable upper intake level is the full term for it, but UL we often just refer to it as. And this is the highest average daily nutrient intake level that's likely to pose no risk of any problems, basically. If you as you get above that, then all bets are off. Now, there's another value out there that we don't see too much in the United States. This was set by a group in the United Kingdom, and this is called a safe upper limit. This is designed as a recommendation for a reasonably safe intake from dietary supplements alone. So the upper limit that we just looked at, that's set in the United States, that's for food and supplements combined, so total intake from food and supplements combined. This SUL is, you could kind of think of it as a supplement upper limit. That's not actually what it stands for. It stands for safe upper limit, but what it means is supplement upper limit. And so they're saying that this is a level of intake for the nutrients they set it for anyway, that should be reasonably safe on a lifelong basis for a given nutrient. So if we look at our, go back to our graph here and look at these levels again. So again, we're looking at vitamin A for an adult female, RDA here. Turns out the safe upper limit for vitamin A is right at the daily value. So if you're taking a dietary supplement that says you're getting 100% of the daily value for vitamin A, you are right at the safe upper limit for supplements. And you can see then that this safe upper limit is essentially trying to take into account also, okay, probably this much more is coming from food out here in this realm. So we're trying to keep them below this upper limit by not exceeding this SUL for the supplements. And so if we think about these numbers then just in a table form, again, we're looking at an adult female. And the RDA, we said, for vitamin A was 700. The daily value, a little more than double that. Upper limit, about 200% of the daily value. And the safe upper limit here is half that upper limit. And then I just have the international units down here because a lot of supplements are labeled with international units instead of micrograms. And we included in your homework this table that's at this link here, this upper limit table. So you have that. And Joni and I have been kicking around ways to think about how do you think about getting enough or not too much, right, I guess. You know, they're needed in, nutrients are needed in specific amounts, and they work to benefit all aspects of our health, mental, physical, and all that. And so the concept we're trying to get across here, and I don't know, maybe there are better ways we're looking for it, but, you know, one pair of shoes works really well. But if you got 4 pairs of shoes, you only got 2 feet. So where are the others? Where are they going to go? You know, I don't know. And so the concept there, you know, take as much as your body can work with. More than enough is not better than enough. In fact, it's awkward and worthless and maybe harmful. So the table that we gave you has these values in it. This is just part of that table to illustrate what to look at and how to think about it there. And we even took the units of measure off here just to make it display simple. So we've been talking about vitamin A. We said the RDA adequate intake value here is 700 for a female. 3,000 is the upper limit. Upper limit. So if we look at this column here is getting at what proportion of the upper limit is the RDA, or you know, the upper limit in the case of vitamin A is about a little over 4 times the recommended intake. So in other words, it's fairly easy to get up to 4 times the RDA. So the upper limit is relatively low for that nutrient relative to its recommended intake. It's only a little over 4 times what's recommended becomes potentially risky. And if you look at the safe upper limit, it's only about twice of the recommended intake. And again, that's twice the RDA here, not twice the daily value, which was 1,500 actually. So you go through this list and you just sort of scan through, you can see, okay, let's see, niacin, that's got a fairly low upper limit, primarily because of short-term flushing effects that people experience, tingling and that sort of thing. Calcium, just 2.5 times the recommended intake is getting you to the upper limit. Magnesium, because a high dose of that causes the runs in a lot of people very quickly. It's a good laxative. That's why it's set so low. It's a little bit different than the rest. It's a short-term effect. The rest are based on long-term problems. Iron, around 5 to 6 times the recommended intake, and so on. So you can see, especially with these safe upper limits, something like iron, only twice the recommended intake is getting you up there. And so this is the table that we gave you, and the print is too small for the slide here to view very well, but just wanted to pop it up there because this is that table that you have and that is available, and it shows you basically the RDAs, the daily values, upper limits and safe upper limits, and then over here the potential problems that can occur from excess intake. So if you did the homework, you filled this out, and what I'm going to do with it is go through an example. We've got up to 4 supplements you could have listed here and what was in them, added up and see how you compared to the percent of daily value that would be too much. So let's just say somebody had a fortified breakfast cereal, and so this would be their supplemented intake in that breakfast cereal. And let's say also they had a multivitamin, standard multivitamin mineral pill. And also maybe having some vision issues or taking an eye health supplement on top of that. So 3 seemingly harmless supplements. So we look at what's in each one of them here, add them up, and then take a look at did we exceed the percent daily value that would be too much? And so here we were at 60, and we didn't get over the 100. So for beta-carotene, we have a safe upper limit for that, and in this case we did exceed the recommended intake, so got a yes. For most of these things we're okay. Down here what we had zinc was because of the combination of the amounts in the cereal, the multi and very large amounts in the eye supplement, we got up here to over that upper limit. Now, is that a problem? Maybe. That's something you might need to talk to your physician about. There are medical reasons sometimes to take higher doses of some of these things. But if you've identified things that are off the charts for you, you may want to think about adjusting it. If you think that you may be up there because of medical reasons, you may want to talk to your physician about it to make sure you're not messing up, or maybe there's a good medical reason for it. So, did you do your homework? And so let's talk about a couple of these things that were excessive there real quickly. Beta-carotene intake. The effects of too much beta-carotene are really poorly understood. I've looked for information on it, and a number of years ago I had a woman contact me from back east that was feeding her family all these juices and created a bunch of health issues, and she was convinced that she had poisoned her family with too much beta-carotene, and I looked into the literature at the time trying to find information on it, and it was not real conclusive, but I think she was right. She stopped doing what she was doing, and everybody came back around, got a lot better, but anyway, excess beta-carotene, increased risk for lung cancer in smokers. That one's established really well. might compromise normal drug metabolism because beta-carotene utilizes a lot of the same enzymes in the liver that certain drugs do, so there's a competition for drug metabolism possibly. And the rest of this would just have some, articles of interest that have been published. This one, effective vitamin E and beta-carotene on the incidence of lung cancer and other cancers in male smokers. That was a big study showing issues with too much beta-carotene supplementation. Too many antioxidants, shifting perspective on antioxidants, the case for vitamin E and beta-carotene, getting too much of these things. This paper concluded that there's definitely does not necessarily have to be, supplementation of antioxidants does not necessarily have to be beneficial, and natural origin is no guarantee of safety. Optimal risk-benefit ratio has to be determined for each antioxidant and for each individual separately, also considering the dose. And so need to think about risk as well as benefits on these things is the bottom line. What about zinc? We saw that zinc was too high in that particular person's made-up intake, and too much zinc can impair immune function. It can lower HDL or good cholesterol levels, can cause iron deficiency, uses the same carrier for absorption, so interferes with the absorption of iron and some other minerals too. So zinc can be an issue. Calcium, too much calcium is associated with an increased risk of death from heart disease, not always appreciated. This graph here is just showing as calcium intake increases from a low intake, the risk of deaths from ischemic heart disease decline, and then we have our sweet spot down here, and the sort of the bottom line message is, from this study anyway, suggests that keeping calcium intake below 1,400 milligrams a day from diet and supplements combined is probably going to keep risk down. So you can see the risk after you get past about 1,400 here starts to go up. This is a study by Bruce Ames that Joni had mentioned Bruce Ames's work, and he's also emphasizing that optimal micronutrients is important and may delay mitochondrial delay that's associated with aging and that sort of thing. And he's looking forward to the point where we can really do more targeted, individualized nutrition recommendations where a prick of finger stick of blood, we can analyze it and figure out exactly what somebody needs so they get not too much, not too little, but just right on the nutrients for them. And we're not all clones of each other, so we do have genetic differences and life experiences that may have changed our needs that are different from somebody else's. And then there's a lot of interactions that can go on between supplements and drugs, and that is a whole other huge topic all in itself. And there's just a few examples here of supplements that can clash with anti-clotting medications. So if you're taking an antiplatelet or an anticoagulant, all of these things potentially can affect the function of those drugs. Everybody hears about vitamin K, of course, if you're on an anticoagulant, but all of these herbs and various, even some of these nutrients in high doses might affect the function of those drugs. Now, we started off earlier saying that the adverse events that occur due to supplements are only monitored after the fact, that FDA does not review things before they go on the market, and no funding for that. And so how do you report something that is, well, first of all, if you get an adverse effect from a product, you can go to this link here and submit a report to the Food and Drug Administration. If you see something that you think is falsely advertised, and there's a lot of those out there, you can go to the Federal Trade Commission website and submit a complaint. And they will, if they get enough complaints, they will investigate and maybe clamp down on somebody. A number of years ago, gosh, probably 15 years ago now, I think it was, I saw an ad in the Sunday Star Bulletin edition kind of thing, and it was total hogwash. And so I sent in a complaint to the Federal Trade Commission, and it was about a year and a half later, I saw in this little newsletter that I get that this company had been fined $8.3 million for improper advertising. And I felt kind of good. But I'm sure they probably made $20 million in the process, but anyway. So anyway, those are some places where you can go. So finishing up with basic concepts here, focus on meeting essential nutrient needs first. You know, Joni emphasized that in her talk plenty. The Goldilocks principle, not too much, not too little, you know, but just right. And I don't know, for those of you who are Frank DeLima fans, there's another anti-Miliolani, right, on the wine. Oh, well, another thing. It takes time to develop a nutrient deficiency, and it also takes time to develop a nutrient toxicity, typically. You know, so you may be doing something for years before a problem occurs in terms of, you know, maybe a dietary change that was beneficial at first, but over time drains your body of an essential nutrient or more, or you've been taking high doses of something for a number of years and eventually it becomes a problem. Ask your pharmacist about drug-nutrient interactions too. You know, most of us, as we get older, there are certain drugs that are important and can be lifesavers, but there are a lot of potentials for drug-nutrient interactions, and pharmacists are really good for getting that information from. And then just some reliable resources that we'll leave you with. You know, Office of Dietary Supplements has very good information on supplements, their website there. ConsumerLab.com evaluates supplements and publishes what's in them and what's not in them. And then this is a newer one, Labdoor. They provide supplement ratings and reviews based on analytical testing, and they make their money because if you click on a link in there to purchase a supplement, then they get a kickback. But they do have some good information on the website. Other helpful resources, just various books that are out there. Some of these are older, some are newer. This Naturally Occurring Toxicants in Foods was published back in the 70s. We still refer to it. There's no other book quite like it. And then some of these others are just handy. Honest Herbal's been around for a long time too. And this geriatric dosage handbook, Joni uses this a lot in the clinic. I'm not sure how easy it is to find that anymore, but it really gives you some good information on a lot of different products and things. So, questions, comments?